Okay, kids. We're going to start with the chapter, part of the chapter which is unification of Britain. Now, as I told you in the last class, when we did unification of Germany and when we did the unification of Italy. Now, unification of Germany and of Italy, these two unifications were a political issue. Germany had three countries, okay? Austria-Hungary, then you had France, and you had the noise and pulling. Please put it off. You are going on to, I am on the class, and this is going live. Okay, so I think there is somebody by the name of Laman Mittal who hasn't switched off his microphone. Whatever I'm speaking is being recorded, so your name will be internationally welcome. Now, children, in Italy, it was again three people. That is, you had Austria-Hungary, then you had France as usual, and then you had the Spanish. Now, when there was unification of Italy and the unification of Germany, what had to be done was they had to throw out all these three countries. But with Britain, it's a very, very strange phenomenon. Now, follow Britain. Britain, if you go to search on the map, you are not going to find a place by the name of Britain, right? Actually, there were three places. I'm doing it diagrammatically on the board so that it becomes easier for you to understand, and then you can even copy the diagram out as I am doing it. Now there were three places. One was England, one was Scotland, and one was Ireland. Right? Now, Britain, England became very, very famous. England became extremely very famous, and when England became famous, England was troubled over the fact, oh, my size is so small. Look at France, it is so big. Look at Germany, they are so big. I am so small. So what England decided about a plan? Now they said, we will join up these three places, make it into one country, which will be called Great Britain, or which will be called, United Kingdoms of Great Britain. Now, for this, they had to sign a treaty, and this treaty was Act of Union 1707. This was the treaty which they had to sign. Now, when they had to sign this treaty, now there was absolutely no problems, children. There was absolutely no problem in these places. No problem in the sense that Scotland was quite happy with itself. Ireland was quite happy with itself. But England was not happy because of the size. So what England did, first they attacked Scotland. Now, when they attacked Scotland, they forced the people of Scotland to join the Act of Union. To that extent that the original Scottish people were not allowed to speak their language, their Gaelic language. They were not allowed to wear the national costume, and many of the original people, they were even driven out of their homes and separated and scattered in the whole of Scotland. Now, how can they fight collectively? And when they joined Britain, when they joined the Act of Union, Britain dominated them, and they totally lost all their identity. They totally lost their identity. Now, what happened was, Britain, there's so many kids coming in late, Now, when they lost their identity, they became, colony of the British. They became a colony of the British. Now, with Ireland different issue. Now, in Ireland, there were two communities. Okay? Remember, children, all the people are Christians. Okay? But among Christians, there are two different parts. Now, one was Catholics and the other was Protestants. The other were Protestants. Now, England has majority of the population who are Protestants. Now, what they did, now also remember one thing. England has Protestants as their major population. Another thing better, in Ireland, the Catholics were poor and the Protestants were rich, right? And because England was Protestant, the Protestants wanted to join with England. The Catholics did not want to join with England. They said, why? We are an independent country, we are free, why do we need to join with England? But England started to help the Protestants. And there was a civil war between the Catholics and the Protestants. Catholics were, their leader was Wolfe Tone. He was a man, he was leading the Catholics. But then no money and poverty. So finally, the Irish also, they had to give up. And they signed the treaty, the Act of Union. But you know what happened after that? After that, the national flag of England became the national flag of Britain. The national anthem, and Britain, the language, the national anthem of Britain of England became the national anthem of Britain. The national language of England, that is English, as it is spoken in England, became the national anthem, became the national language, So ultimately, what happened to Ireland and Scotland? They were totally dominated by England. They lost their identity. England became the superior power, they became the inferior power, they became people who were dominated by England. So unification of Britain, it's rather strange because if you look on the map, you are not going to find a place which says Britain. Okay? Now, all these three places together, that is England, Scotland, and Ireland, they are being called as the United Kingdoms of Great Britain. Right? Now, you please take down the notes. Now, take down the notes, Peter. Put the heading. Now, put the heading Britain. Okay, and take down a question which I am giving you, and that comes normally in the board exam. Take down the question. Unification of Britain. Unification of Britain was an ethnic problem. Unification of Britain was an ethnic problem and not a political problem. Was an ethnic problem and not a political problem. Justify. Now, take down the answer. Prior to the 18th century, prior, P-R-I-O-R, prior to the 18th century, there was no British nation. There was no British nation. The people of the British Isles, I-S-L-E-S, the people of the British Isles, I-S-L-E-S, comprised of Scottish, Irish and English. Comprised of Scottish, Irish and English. Next paragraph. In time, England grew. In time, England grew in wealth, importance, and power. In time, England grew in wealth, importance, and power. And by the highlight beta Act of Union 1707. Underline, highlight this. Act of Union 1707 was able to extend its influence and form, please highlight, United Kingdom of Great Britain, and form, highlight please, United Kingdom of Great Britain. Now, next paragraph. In Scotland, the Scottish Highlanders, were not allowed to speak their Gaelic, Gaelic, Gaelic language, or to wear their national costume, or to wear their national costume. Many of them were driven out. Many of them were driven out of their homeland. Many of them were driven out of their homeland. When Scotland signed the Act of Union, it lost its distinctive culture. It lost its distinctive culture and political institutions. Now, next paragraph. Ireland, Ireland, comprised of Catholics. Ireland comprised of Catholics and Protestants. Catholics and Protestants. The English helped the Protestants. The Catholics did not wish to join the Union of Britain. The Catholics did not wish to join the Union of Britain. This resulted in a civil war. The Catholics, led by Wolfe-Tone, I'm writing the word here, throne were defeated. And finally, in highlight 1801, highlight 1801, the Act of Union was signed. Next paragraph. The national flag of England the national flag of England, the national anthem of England, the national anthem of England, and national language that is English as it was spoken, English as it was spoken in England, was actively promoted. Scotland and Ireland became subordinate partners in the Union. Subordinate partners in the Union. Okay. Now kids, when we look like how India we have Bharat Mata, they also wanted something, which would look like a nation, something which would identify a nation. So they made an imaginary figure that is called an allegory. And that for France, they made a female figure of an unknown person, and that female figure was called Marianne. At the same time, later in Germany, they made a female figure. She was called Germania. Now, these like how you have justice. Then you have a lady in white with the eyes tied and scales in a hand. That represents justice. Statue of Liberty, a lady, torch of enlightenment, charter of the rights of man in the other. So the same way they made a statue. Now, this statue, in France, it would be there on their stamps and in public places. People began to identify Marianne with nationalism, Germania with nationalism. Now, there were certain symbols that they had, like, maybe wearing a crown of oak leaves. Oak is heroism. So that is identifying heroism. A sword in the hand, readiness to fight. Now, these allegories I will explain in the next class.